I grew up near this forest. It was always there, just behind our town, like a quiet green wall separating us from the rest of the world. I walked through it hundreds of times during my life, sometimes without even thinking about it. As a child, it was a place for games and adventures. As a teenager, it became a place where I could be alone with my thoughts. As an adult, I used it as a simple escape after long and stressful days. I knew the forest well. I knew which paths were easy and which ones were muddy after rain. I knew where the ground went slightly downhill and where the trees grew closer together. There were small landmarks only locals would notice, like a broken sign, a tree with a strange bend, or a large stone near one of the paths. Because of that, I never felt afraid there. The forest felt familiar, almost like an old friend. That is why what happened that day still does not make sense to me. It was a normal afternoon, calm and quiet. The weather was mild, with no strong wind and no dark clouds in the sky. I finished my work earlier than usual and decided to go for a short walk. Nothing serious, just 30 minutes to clear my head before dinner. I did not bring water, because I did not plan to stay long. I did not check the battery on my phone. I had walked this path so many times that preparation felt unnecessary. I entered the forest through the same entrance I always used. The ground was dry, and the air smelled like leaves and soil. Birds were making soft sounds above me, and everything felt normal. I followed the main path, walking at a relaxed pace, thinking about small everyday things. My job, some plans for the weekend, nothing important. After about 10 minutes, I reached a familiar crossroads. I had been there countless times before. I turned left, just like I usually did, and continued walking. At that point, I expected to reach a small clearing within a few minutes. It was a place where sunlight always came through the trees, and I often stopped there to rest. But the clearing never appeared. Instead, the path kept going, straight and narrow, surrounded by trees that seemed taller and closer together than usual. I noticed it, but I did not panic. Forests can look different depending on the light, I told myself. I kept walking. After another few minutes, I started to feel something was off. The silence felt heavier. The birds were gone. Even the sound of my footsteps felt strange, as if the forest was absorbing the noise. I stopped and looked around. The trees looked similar, but not familiar. I could not recognize any of my usual landmarks. That was the moment I felt the first wave of confusion. I checked my phone. The signal was weak, but I could still see the time. According to my phone, I had been walking for only about 20 minutes. That was impossible. I should have been close to the edge of the forest by now. I decided to turn around and go back the way I came. I turned and walked in the opposite direction, confident that I would reach the crossroads again. I walked for 5 minutes. Then 10. The path did not change. No crossroads. No familiar signs. Just the same trees and the same narrow trail stretching ahead of me. I started to feel uneasy. I tried to stay calm and think logically. People get disoriented in forests all the time, even in places they know well. I reminded myself of that. I decided to leave the path and walk in a straight line toward where I knew the town should be. I remembered the general direction clearly, or at least I thought I did. As soon as I stepped off the path, the forest seemed thicker. The ground was uneven, and branches scratched my arms. After a few minutes, I stopped. Something felt wrong. The light around me looked different, slightly dimmer, even though it was still afternoon. I felt like I was walking deeper instead of getting closer to the edge. I went back to the path. At this point, I started to feel a quiet fear. Not panic, but a growing sense that something was not right. I checked my phone again. The battery was dropping faster than I expected. The time showed that more than an hour had passed since I entered the forest. That made no sense. I had not walked far. I had not stopped for long. There was no reason for time to pass so quickly. I tried calling someone, but the call failed immediately. No signal. I continued walking, hoping to find something familiar. After some time, I noticed something strange on the ground. There were footprints ahead of me. At first, that gave me relief. Other people had been here. I was not alone. But when I looked closer, my relief disappeared. The footprints were mine. I recognized the pattern on the soles of my shoes. The spacing between the steps was exactly the same as my own. I was following my own trail, yet I had no memory of walking this part of the forest before. My heart started beating faster. I followed the footprints until they suddenly stopped, right in the middle of the path, as if the person had vanished. I stood there, frozen, trying to understand what I was seeing. I turned slowly in a circle. Everything around me looked the same. That was when I noticed a small path to my right. I was sure it had not been there before. The path was narrow and barely visible, almost hidden between bushes. I hesitated. Every instinct told me not to take it. But staying where I was felt worse. I needed to move, to do something. So I stepped onto the small path and followed it. The forest felt different there. The air was colder, and the trees were closer together. I walked slowly, listening to every sound. After a while, I reached a small open area. In the center of it stood a single tree, older and larger than the rest. I knew that tree. I had seen it many times before. I checked my phone again. The battery was almost dead. The time showed late evening. That was impossible. There was no way I had been in the forest that long. Panic started to rise in my chest. I shouted for help, but my voice sounded weak and distant, swallowed by the trees. No one answered. I sat down near the tree, trying to calm myself. I took deep breaths and forced myself to think clearly. I told myself that fear was making everything feel worse. I needed to choose one direction and stick to it. So I stood up and walked away from the tree, choosing the widest path I could see. After what felt like a long time, I noticed a change in the light. It became warmer, brighter. I heard distant sounds. Not forest sounds, but human ones. A car engine. Voices. I started running. The trees slowly became thinner, and suddenly I stepped out of the forest onto a familiar road near the edge of town. I almost fell to my knees from relief. Cars passed by. People walked their dogs. Everything looked normal, like nothing strange had happened. I checked my phone one last time before it died completely. According to the time, I had been gone for almost 6 hours. When I got home, my family was worried. They said they had been trying to call me for hours. They even considered contacting the police. I tried to explain what happened, but the words sounded strange even to my own ears. Getting lost in a forest I knew my whole life did not make sense. Later that night, I looked at a map of the forest. I traced the paths with my finger, trying to understand where I had gone wrong. But the path I remembered, the small hidden one, was not on any map. Even today, when I walk near that forest, I feel uneasy. I still go there sometimes, but I never stay long, and I never leave the main path. Because I know now that even familiar places can change. Or maybe they always had parts we were never meant to find. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to share yours in the comments. Maybe we'll tell it in the next video. Bye.